Well, you have to understand what the media is. The media is made up of businesses. It's made up of newspapers and television stations that are businesses. As businesses, they either generate revenue or they go out of business. The way that media sources generate revenue is through advertising. And the way that you generate money through advertising is to have high ratings. The way you get high ratings is to have a lot of people watching you. And the way you get a lot of people watching you is to have really exciting news that's different than the norm. I mean, that's what people want to watch. And so as people watch, in order to get this exciting news, most media sources have to sensationalize what they're reporting on. And so by definition, most of what you see is sensationalized. It's either the really extreme things that are happening out there or it's normal things that are sensationalized. And if you're making your investment decisions based on sensationalized information, you're going to make some huge mistakes. I think a good example would be last year in the stock market. In 2008, for example, the economy was weakening. We were going through a normal downturn, and the stock market normally in that situation is going to lose 25 to 30% of its value in a normal bear market. Last year, we had a unique situation where we had a presidential election, so there was a lot of political uncertainty. And then you take that political uncertainty and you add in the hype of the media, hyping two things, the political uncertainty and then also just the economic weakness and the problems with the banks, but hyping the heck out of it. When you take that situation, then you create an extreme situation where instead of the market losing 25 to 30% of its value, last year it lost 56% of its value. And in my opinion, that was purely because of all the media hype that was surrounding what was going on and the way it was reported on. Well, I can't say that the sell-off was absolutely caused by the media. All I can say is that the evidence is overwhelming that the media had a huge impact on the market sell-off last year. And I believe that's really concrete. To try and put it in perspective or to try and look at it from another angle, if you look at the swine flu frenzy that's going on, back in April they announced swine flu. Everywhere you looked in the media, that's all you heard about was swine flu. So to put that in perspective, you've got a normal flu season where about 30,000 people die, or not people, but in the U.S., about 30,000 Americans die each year from regular flu. From this swine flu that has had nonstop coverage, there's been 550 Americans die since April. So 550 versus the normal 30,000. But swine flu has gotten much more hype and press than the normal flu. So, and it's caused a lot of irrational behavior. You know, when I went to my doctor, and my doctor told me that everyone who's coming to him thinks they have swine flu. I mean, he found it really annoying because they've turned into a swine flu clinic for a whole bunch of people that don't have swine flu, but they think they've got swine flu. And you know, some of the examples over in Egypt, they killed 400,000 pigs to prevent swine flu. When swine flu is rarely transmitted from a pig to a person, it's a person-to-person transmission. Russia stopped imports from several countries because of swine flu with pork. You know, Joe Biden pipes up and gives advice that no one should travel in confined spaces because of swine flu. So you get all this talking, all this carrying on about swine flu. You get people all worked up and worried, and people react to that. Well, the difference between the stock market and something like swine flu is all you can really do about swine flu is worry about it. You can't force yourself to die because of what you heard on the newspaper or heard on the nightly news or read in the newspaper. But with investments, it's different. If you take an investor who is taking in all this information or misinformation, and they're making their investment decisions based on that, they're going to be selling out at the worst possible time. And by definition, the bulk of the investors sold out in February and March of this year, of 2009. That was the absolute bottom. Those investors who sold out in February and March missed out on about a 50% gain over the last 6 months. And they did it because they were scared, and they did it because they were concerned. But a lot of their fear and concern came from what they saw in the media. So my advice is, don't invest based on what you see in the media. There are better ways.
To try to quantify what you're seeing in the newspapers or on the TV, that's something that's very hard to do. You can kind of get a feel, hey, it looks like a lot of people are bullish or a lot of people are very bearish, but how do you really know that's something that you can use? And so here at Paragon, we use what are called sentiment indicators, and we use them in a contrary sense. We want to try to take a measure of people's attitudes towards the market, their sentiment, and see how many people are bullish, how many people are bearish, and use that when it gets to the extreme as a contrary indicator to either pull back from the market or maybe to invest more aggressively. It just depends. Like I said, it's a little bit of an art and a science, but we have indicators and tools that try to quantify that. They basically take a look at individual investors, their attitudes towards the market, their expectations, and also professional investors, like maybe a manager of a mutual fund or other investment advisors, and we quantify what their views are on the market. Are they bullish or bearish? Then we also take a look at the component of how invested are they in respect to like their cash levels. Do they have a lot of cash? Do they have, or are they fully invested? That way it helps us to know their attitudes might be one way, but then let's see what their actions are as well. And usually when those start to get to the extreme where everyone's bullish or everyone's bearish, that's where you got to be careful. So most of the time we'll use those indicators, we'll just kind of go with the flow, but once we see those hitting extremes in relation to where they have in the past in history, we'll start to use those indicators in a contrary way to take maybe the opposite approach to the market. And it's worked very well. You saw back in 2000 when the market was peaking with the tech sector, everybody was bullish. You're seeing, your brothers, your sisters, everybody meet on the street, want to give you a stock tip. Well, that kind of warns you, hey, I got to be careful here. Well, the sentiment indicators were basically telling us the same thing then. The exact opposite back in the end of February, early part of March. Everybody's fearful. No one wants to be in the market right before the market went up the other way. And the sentiment levels were hitting extreme pessimism like we've never seen. So, and we use that to try to position the portfolios for the subsequent rebound.